welcome. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. I hope you're having a great time now during the holidays and that you're spending it with loved ones, whoever they may be. I hope you're having a good Christmas and that you're getting to eat a bunch of good food and maybe even getting some nice Christmas presents. Maybe even a new guitar. That would always be nice. This is a collection of the 4 videos put together into one where I built this guitar. Now the reason why I'm making this video is because some of you might rather watch one long video than just a episode here and there. There is a playlist, but for your convenience, if you want to see this one long video instead, here it is now. I've already done 2 before. It came out the day before yesterday, and hopefully you'll enjoy this video. Let me know in the comments below if you do. Building this guitar was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed making it, and hopefully you'll enjoy watching me build this guitar. And if you've already seen the other videos, thanks so much. And if you've been waiting to see this video, then I really hope you enjoy it. And hopefully I'll see you again next year. Take care now. Merry Christmas. And don't forget to stay awesome and cool and go and enjoy the holidays. And take some extra time to relax and recharge your batteries for the new year that is about to come. I have a guitar that I bought at an auction. It was one of those sold as is, or project guitar as they sometimes calls them. And I thought this guitar would be a great guitar to make another build series where I restaurate the guitar. And since I bought it for very little money, about, I think it was 10 euros. So yeah, the guitar didn't have any electronics, but it came with most of the other things. So here's the body, the way it looks, and here's the headstock and the neck. And all in all, I feel like this is actually a pretty good guitar. I have a new scratch plate for it right here, and I also have a loaded pickguard here with all the electronics that I need for a Stratocaster. And so felt like it was sort of fate that I would have everything I need to put this guitar together, and that it would come without the parts that I would just get rid of anyway. Sort of almost like a kit guitar, but with the good parts and not with the cheap parts. We do still have some parts though, like the bridge and the tuners. And right now I'm not going to replace any of those parts. I'm going to keep them for now, and then as I continue the build, we'll see what happens. There are a couple of things that I need to fix on the guitar, and so we're going to jump in and take a look at it, and then we're just going to start off. And in this video we're going to start off with the body. So let's first take a look at the guitar, because there are some issues that are going to come up as this build prolongs, and then we'll jump into starting with the body. So here we have the body, and the first thing is these 2 screws here. I don't know if you can see them, but there are 2 screws poking out here. And that is what happens when you're trying to block the trem, but you're not doing it the correct way. Some YouTubers will tell you that you can just pull the claw back as far as you can to tighten up the springs and make everything solid. And they are wrong. You're not supposed to do that. First of all, it's not very good for the springs. The springs are supposed to be pulled and go back to their natural state. They're not supposed to always be under tension. That's not how springs work. And the second thing is, if you pull this all the way back like this, your screws will come up here. Now, it doesn't matter on this guitar because we don't have the electronics, but they could actually hit the pickup and damage it. It sort of depends on what angle they come out of. It's super risky and you shouldn't do it. And it could actually be the reason why this guitar was sold without any electronics, because the person who had this guitar before might have actually been trying to fix it and not knowing what to do and given up on it. My suggestion is that if you're gonna block off a trem, you put a piece of wood right here. I've done other videos about this. I've talked about this a lot. I've said it 100 times and I'll say it again. Block off the trem with a piece of wood here. Screw it back so that they are under tension and the trem is being pulled this way and is lying flat here. And then you put in a shim made out of wood, and then you can pull this back. But you don't need to go this far for that. But that's basically all there is to this, damage-wise. But we still have some issues that we're gonna talk about in a second. The only other issue I see is on the slot for the nut. There is no nut, but I can make a new one. And also, as you can probably see, this is damaged and has been ruined. And what I think is that the person before wanted to install something like a Floyd Rose, and they wanted to make a slot for a nut that could clamp down the strings and hold them in place. And so they tried to level it out and make it nice and neat, and they just smashed everything. So I'm just gonna have to fix this, but that's in another video, because in this video we're gonna focus on the body. And the first thing we're gonna fix after we've taken everything off is we're gonna fix this upper horn here. I don't know if you can see it, but if you look closely, this body does not really look like a Stratocaster. And if I take my pickguard here, which is for a Fender Stratocaster, you will really easily see what I mean, because it will become apparent, and very much so. So if I put this pickguard here and I try to align it the way I think it's gonna sit, which is something like this, and I hold the guitar up, which is maybe a little bit hard for me to do, but hopefully you can see that we have an edge here that is perfect. Everything is evenly spaced until we get here where it gets closer to the edge, and right here it's almost off the edge actually. And here we have a lot of meat. And you could do something like, for example, if you have the pickguard like this and you're happy with the way it looks and you just want to fix this edge here, you could definitely just redraw this into a shape you liked and cut it off and then put an angle on it and reshape the pickguard a little bit. But I am not really happy with that. So we're going to take this off and we're actually going to chop this piece of wood off, this horn. We're just going to take our circular saw and just cut through the entire body and everything and just chop it off and glue on a new piece of wood right here. We're gonna match up not the grain but the flow of the grain at least, so it doesn't look totally crazy, because that's something that I always find annoying when you have grain going in this direction like it's supposed to, and then you see a piece of wood and the grain is going in another direction. It's not the way it's supposed to look, so we're gonna cut it somewhere around here and glue that piece on basically. But first we are gonna take off the bridge and the neck and the output jack and the claw on the back. So let's do that. And there's one screw and only 3 more to go. Okay, so let's just pull these screws out and hopefully we can fix the holes, at least somewhat. We don't necessarily need to fill them all the way since the claw is coming back in. But yeah, I don't know if you can see it, but I'm struggling to pull this screw out. So I might have to go and get a drill. Actually, I am gonna go and get a drill because I don't need to sit here all day. Okay, so this is actually kind of weird, and this is one of the fun things about, you know, buying secondhand guitars that are broken and, you know, sort of see how people solve their problems and the weird things they do. But these 4 screws are the ones holding the neck in place, and these 2 screws are the ones holding the claw in place. And if you look real close, which I hope you can see, they are all the same. Now, if the guitar came like that, it's super weird, and if the person who had this guitar before did this, then I can understand it, but it's, you know, supposed to be other screws. Five more to go. I actually think that this trem might be, I mean, maybe not the best quality you can get, but if I compare it to the other trems from my 2 Harley Benton guitars, it feels more solid. It definitely waves more, and so I think that you're getting a nicer trem with this guitar. And as I can see here right now, we have a lot of holes to fill. I'm gonna try to keep the ones that lined this bridge, and the ones that misalign I'm gonna try to fill, And by the way they look, I would say that the person who had this before had to move the bridge over a little bit, because the holes that it was attached to now are the correct holes. Again, ridiculously long screws. This is weird. So maybe the guitar comes with weird screws. And we'll just pull this up and pull the wire out. It has a little knot on it. And it's out. And this one, it's a little bit dirty, but it looks okay. The output jack looks a little bit shady, I would say. I think I'm gonna test it before I put it back in to see if it's working, and also take a plug and put in to see if it gets a nice connection. It looks like it gets a nice connection, but we're still gonna have to try it out and see if it actually works. Okay, so here we have the pickguard now, and I've just taped it to the body, roughly. We don't have to be super exact right now, but we're gonna have to be later on. So, I'm just gonna feel here somewhere, I feel like is where the movement, I feel like it's about 90% accurate here. This is a nice spacing from the body to the pickguard, and it gets thinner and thinner and thinner, and somewhere around here, right there. I'll remove this super quickly, and we'll put a ruler down. This doesn't have to be super accurate either, but it's nice if we do somewhat of a good job, I suppose. So there we have it, and this we're gonna remove. Okay, so here's the body right now, and as you can see, I've cut this off, and I used my circular saw to do so because I get a nice, clean, even, straight cut, and I don't have to do a bunch of weird work. And when you don't have to do a bunch of weird work, that's a win, because I'm so tired. No, seriously, it looks good enough for what we're doing. And since I'm going to replace the lacquer, which we're going to talk about later, the only thing is that I went a little bit far. You don't want to go into the edge because you get a weird thing like this. And what that means is that we're going to have to go with a solid color, because otherwise we're going to get a weird line down the side, which I don't want. I don't mind, you know, a transparent finish on a guitar with multiple pieces, but if they are weirdly put together, you need to go with solid color. So we're going to go with solid color on this one, which for what I'm going to do with the lacquer will probably work out fine anyway. But just so you know. So I've also cut out a piece of wood, just a blank like this, and we're gonna glue this onto here, like so. And it's a little bit oversized, but that's because that gives us the opportunity to reshape it and rework it and really make it look the way we want it to look, so the pickguard fits. Don't cut out two small pieces trying to save wood and then realize that, oh, I've made a mistake, I need to redo everything and find a bigger piece, because that's how you really waste wood. But anyway, first I'm going to take some of these bamboo skews. It's the ones you use when you're, you know, grilling in the summer, which is perfect for right now. And I'm just going to plug up all the holes on this body. And it's mostly because we're not going to need those holes. Nothing is where it's supposed to be. And so I'm just super quickly going to plug up the holes. And I'm just going to show you a couple of holes how I do it. And then we'll glue on the horn. And then we'll be done for today, which you don't have to worry about, because tomorrow will be in this video as well, when we come back and everything has dried. But it's getting pretty late, and I think I'm gonna go and watch a movie after this. And I think I'm gonna watch, I don't know, In the Mood for Love, which is a really great film from China. And if you haven't seen it, you should see it, because it's one of the greatest films of the 90s. So, actually it came out in 2000, I think. So scratch that. So I cut off a tiny piece like this. It's maybe 2 or 3 centimeters. And then I just take a knife and I just make them sharp, which you can't see, but I basically make them sharp. Then I just take some wood glue and I smear some around. I'm using the wood glue in the lid right now, but that's just because it's there. Might as well use it. And then I just put it in place. I take a tiny little hammer. These sort of hammers are really good to have, and they're called, you know, like furniture maker's hammer most of the time, but they probably have other names as well. And you just tap it into place, and then when you feel like it's gone in a bit, I can cut it somewhat flush, like so, and remove some of the glue squeeze out. And I mostly just remove it so that it's not in the way, but I don't really care about the lacquer because we're gonna remove the lacquer tomorrow, which is, you know, later in the video. So that's how I do it, and then I can just take the rest of this and I can just repeat and try to hold the cutters still so that I don't jank it up or do anything weird as I cut it like that. And you know, it's just repeat. And I'm gonna do all of these holes here, and I'm also gonna do the holes here for the output jack and all the screws for the pickguard. And then I'm gonna do every other hole here for the bridge because, as I said before, some of them are not the correct holes. Okay, so I've filled all the holes in the body except for those 2 holes there. I also haven't filled that hole, but that's for the wire to the claw, so it's not gonna get filled because we don't need to re-drill it. So a little bit of glue on a stick and press it into place, and a little bit of glue on a tiny stick and press it into place, and then a hammer, something like that. And now we can just leave this to dry before we do anything else with it, which is obviously things like leveling it and things like that. I hope you can see those 2 little pins I put in. I'm ready to glue on this right here, just like so. Okay, so I have the body right here, I have a clamp right here, and I'm pretty much ready to go. It's gonna be a little bit fiddly, but I'm gonna use the clamp to press up against the inner cavity here, and I'm just gonna put the piece of wood here, and hopefully with a little bit of finessing manage to clamp this together. Something like that, I think. And I'm gonna put the clamp on this side to hold everything in place, and then I'm gonna try to get something to push here because I can see a little bit of a gap developing, and it's because too much pressure over there. So let's see if we have something to use. We're gonna have to put a clamp across the entire body like this, I think. So let's just hope that might work. And it seems to be closing up real good. Always nice. And you don't actually have to put that much pressure on. I know that it might seem like I'm squeezing out a bit of glue and it's looking like there is a lot of squeezing and therefore there has to be a lot of pressure, but I'm not tightening the clamps much at all. So yeah, that's it. Okay, so it's the next day and all the glue has dried, and as you've just seen, I've planed it down a little bit to the piece of the wood that was sticking out. It still needs some sanding because it's not completely perfect and smooth, but we will do that later. It's not important right now. Here is the body, and it looks a little bit weird. Maybe someone wants to play a guitar that looks like this, but I'm not that person. So we're going to continue working. And if you look really closely, you can see that I've marred up the lacquer a little bit, and it doesn't look that nice, but that is okay because we are going to remove the paint and put on a new layer. Now, if you're one of the people who don't want to remove your own layer, you need to do this, but be more careful. But you still need to mess up the paint a little bit because otherwise you'll have a sharp edge. If you want to see me talk more about this, you can watch my How I Would Have Built Mike Bloomfield guitar series, where I do have to match up colors and things like that, and make sure that lines from where one old piece meets a new piece, you know, don't create a border, basically. Now we're just going to go over all these little weird marks that you can see where the dowels that I put in are still over the surface. You can feel them when you run your finger over them. And then we are gonna start with cutting out the lower horn and making it work for the pickguard. So let's just quickly take our knife and smooth them down. And again, we don't really need to be that gentle or perfect with what we're doing right now, because we are gonna take off the finish and we're gonna smooth everything out with some sanding, and then we're gonna have to put some sealer over all these little holes because otherwise the lacquer that we put on will sink in. But I'll talk more about those things when we get to them. Okay, so now we're gonna start off by taking off the lacquer, and we're gonna use a heat gun and just heat up the lacquer. Try to feel for it. There is a state where it gets almost mushy and like, I don't know, pudding or honey or something thick but runny. It gets to a state where it's similar to that. Not really, but anyway, you'll feel it and you'll see it. Just don't go overboard, because then you'll burn it and it becomes super brittle and cracky and gets difficult to get rid of. So we need to get to the point where we can just peel it off, almost like a banana or something. I'm giving you a bunch of weird analogies right now, and none of them makes any sense, not even to me. So forgive me, but it's kind of hard to tell you how something feels in a video. So yeah, let's just keep this up. And hopefully you can see how I'm just able to basically like scrape it away super easily. Okay, so here we have the body now. I hope you can see it. And I've removed almost all of the paint. I haven't removed it in the lower horn here, but we're gonna reshape this, so it's gonna get removed anyways. I don't need to bother with it right now. Yeah, so here it is. And now we're just gonna put the pickguard in the right place and trace out the shape we want. Cut away the excess, do the round over just like it's supposed to be. The same round over that we have all around the body. And then we'll go on to the next step, which is sanding sealer and sanding the body and all that jazz, and then painting. Okay, so here we have the pickguard and the piece of wood that we need to reshape. We also have up here the parts of the old horn, which is going to get reshaped. We need it to come in. And what I've basically done is I've measured the existing edge, and I'm just going to come in here and make some marks with my pen, just so I have a reference. And then I'm just going to try to follow the pickguard and the shape of the pickguard. And this is where you could come up with some of your own design. So I'm just filling in and I'm reworking this a little bit till I get something that I think looks okay. Something like that. We're not going to follow this line too much. We're going to have something to cut out, and then we're going to slowly work our way in on it. Okay, so you see me holding the body here and I'm moving it across the orbital sander. It's moving up and down and it's just smoothing out the edges. I want to make a seamless transition between the actual body, the one that I've just removed all the lacquer from, and the new piece of wood that I just added. And I'm trying to locate those lines that I've drew in, and I'm trying to move into those, and I'm keeping my distance so I don't move in too far, but I'm also removing as much as I possibly can and trying to reshape it. And I'll take pauses and I'll compare the body to the pickguard, and I'll go back and forth and back until I'm happy with the result and I feel like it's where I want it to be. You have to be extra careful doing it this way because I don't have a template. I could make a template, but it's not really worth it because this is a one-off guitar. I'm most likely not going to find another one of these guitars that look exactly the same, and even if I do, it's, you know, one more guitar. It's not 5 more, 10 more, 20. So yeah, I'm doing it this way, and it's basically just to smooth everything out, and that's why I'm going back and forth, never standing still. Okay, so here's the body right now, and the pickguard is on it, not attached obviously, it's temporarily there to show you what I've done, and I'm pretty happy. I'm not 100% happy, but that's okay. Hopefully I'll fix all my little mistakes when I go to fill the grain on this part and things like that. So yeah, the next part is we need a round over bit like this, put in our router so we follow along and fix the edge. And I just take out all my round over bits and I match them up to the side and just hold them up to see if they match, and then I just pick the one that match. Now some guitars will have different round over bits used on different parts. This is a very inexpensive guitar, so I doubt that they would do something like that here, but if you're unsure, you should test the round over bit in the area you're working. So this is the area we're working on right now, so test it up here and test it down here, because then it will match most likely. So now we're just gonna plug this into the router and then route this both sides. And on the back, if I turn this over, we're gonna go up to here somewhere. We're gonna stop before this, and then we're just gonna take a file and smooth out and blend the two, because we need this sharp edge, because otherwise we're gonna have to countersunk ferrules. And maybe that's something I want, I don't know, but I don't think so. You wanna change the shape here, you can go ahead and even cut this off. Very easy, you just sink in these 3 holes here, plug this one hole up, you can just reshape it like this. Done that to other guitars, my Black Strat for example, and you can just cut this off, have sunken in ferrules there, maybe a fourth one somewhere over here, and be done with it. But we're gonna have the plate, or at least that's what I think. So yeah, let's just stop rambling and do some routing. Okay, so I rounded over to here. Here's the edge. And now I'm just going to take a tiny little file and freehand see if I can smooth it out. Which, as you can see, I'm doing very quickly and easy. And obviously when I sand this, I'm going to sand this as well and make it a little bit smoother. So here's the body now, and I'm perfectly happy with the way it looks. It is almost impossible to see that the horn was never there to begin with. And when I've put color on the guitar and clear coated it, and you know the guitar is all finished, hopefully no one will be able to see that I've done anything. I say hopefully because sometimes, you know, you never know. First thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the tuners, and then we're going to start working on it and see the nut slot here has taken some damage and needs to be fixed. And the way I'm going to fix it is to glue on a new piece of rosewood. This is from an old guitar. I at one point had to remove a fretboard from a guitar, and I kept the broken fretboard and cut it up into smaller pieces, because I know that sometimes there is damage to a fretboard and you can inlay a new piece of rosewood. So saving small pieces is something I really recommend you doing. For example, if I had damage on one of these lower frets here, this one could easily be fitted in here. And so that's basically what we're going to do. We're going to fit this in here. So, without rambling on too much, because I know my videos are too long, but I'm working on it, we're just going to get started, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So by now, you most likely know that to remove the tuners, you need to unscrew the screws holding the tuners in place. And you don't really need to see me do, because you most likely know how to unscrew the screw. And so you have to do that to all of them. That's how easy they come out. Okay, so this is a nail punch. You usually use this when you have a nail you need to hit and you need it to go in, but you don't want the hammer to leave a mark on the wood surrounding the nail, because it has a very tiny little surface here that can fit on the nail. Hammer it in. And we're going to use it to remove these washers. They are not screwed in place, they are pressed in. And if I go on the inside here, which is going to be kind of hard for you to see, but on the inside there is a tiny little ring that is part of the front washer here. You lean it up against that and you just put some force and you push it in, and that way, hope you can see this, a little bit hard to show you, but I'm able to press it out. Now you can use a hammer and hit it to make them come out, but you should actually, with just the force in your hand, be able to press it out. And then you're all good. Coming out nice and neat. Okay, so now we are going to clean this up, and we're going to use a file, and make sure you have a file with one side that does not have teeth on, because that side we're going to lean up against the fretboard here, just like this. And so when we cut down, like so, we'll take off all these weird marks and gunk and all the crap that we need to get rid of. But that we won't cut into the actual playing surface, because if this line gets moved closer to this fret, then the guitar is never going to be able to stay in tune, or rather it's never going to play in tune. And as you can see, fairly quickly I can actually get this all smoothed out. Now, as you probably can see, it's basically done, but the thing is, whoever did this has used some sort of epoxy and it's sunken really deep into the wood, and so I'm trying to see how far down I have to go and see if I can get to bare wood. And if I can't, we're going to have to use epoxy to glue the new piece on, because wood glue will not stick to epoxy. Okay, so I managed to get down past the epoxy, and I think I'd be able to get a nice bond here. So I'm going to take a knife and I'm just going to do some light scratches in the surface, like this, and the other way around too, just so the glue has something to bite to, basically. And I'll do the same to this piece of rosewood. And now I'll just put some wood glue, fair amount but not too much, on the piece of wood I glue on, and I'll just put this in place, and I'll leave a tiny bit of gap between them, just because I don't need to glue them on to each other. And I'll put a piece of tape over, and I'll press it down and into place, something like that. Now I'll just try to see how the gap looks, and I feel like this might be good enough. And I'll just leave this to dry now for about 20 minutes. That's what the glue says the package that I should do, so that's what I'm going to do. If you have a different kind of glue, you should read what it says on the packaging and go with that. Okay, so the glue is still drying a little bit, but it's been about 20 minutes, but we'll come back to it later. I sort of want to reshape the headstock a little bit. Now, I could remove the lacquer, and I could sand off the logo, and I could redraw a completely new headstock, and, you know, sort of really make something different. Maybe even copy something Fender Stratocaster with the shape. But I've done that before, and it's not really a challenge, and it's also not anything new for me, so you can watch other videos I've done about that. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to keep this logo on the headstock out, removing it, and reshape it anyway. I'm just going to put some masking tape on. I'm going to try to see if I can work this out anyway. So first off, here we have the logo, and we're going to keep most of it. Just going to basically like see how far in we can go. Something like that maybe. I'll put a ruler here, and something like that. We have a pretty straight line we can keep, and then here we'll come in and make this round over a little bit more round and not so faded as right now. And I think that's one of the reasons why I sort of don't like this headstock so much, because it feels sort of like it is not really saying anything, which might be a weird way of putting it, but I can work on making it a little bit, want to define it a little bit more, I guess I'm trying to say. So I'm just gonna sit here and rework the headstock a little bit until I have something that is a little bit more classic, but maybe not too much of a copy of a Fender headstock. You know, something like that. I'll be back real soon when I've decided exactly what I want. Okay, so here I have my random orbital sander. I have this wooden base that I sometimes use when I have something with a lacquer that I don't want to touch the metal base because I'm afraid it will mar up the finish. And I've put down the masking tape on the neck and I've cut out the lines where it goes. So now I'm just going to sand this back to where the line I've drawn out meets the actual edge. Okay, so here we have the headstock now, and I'm just going to remove the tape and we'll see what I did. So the logo is still where it's supposed to be, and yeah, the rest is pretty good. It's more Fender inspired, I know, but I just feel like you can't really get away from that. If you do a headstock for something like a Strat or a Tele, the headstock needs to somewhat match the shape of the body, and it's just, you know, such a classic design that the headstock needs to also be somewhat classical. And if you want a more modern shape up here, go for it, but maybe think about what shape you have on the body so that they match. Okay, so now the glue has mostly dried and we can start working on cutting it down to size. And at first I'm just gonna try to remove the bulk of it because it is a little bit much up here. And that's because we have the entirety of the fretboard glued on here, basically. But we only need half of it, or something. So let's just quickly see how much we have to remove. Okay, so now I've basically cut this down to the same level as the fretboard. And it looks a little bit rough, it needs sanding. We're gonna take care of that real soon, but first, now we can come in here and we can start carving down this lip that hangs over. And we're just gonna start off by going at where the fretboard angle meets the new piece and go a little bit before and carve away the wood. And we'll do that on both sides. And it's just because if we go a little bit shallow, we can work our way in and slowly cut away the excess until we match the two pieces up. And so I'm just gonna cut like this and remove the excess until we have matched these two pieces up. And now we're gonna move on to the next part, which is we are gonna sand everything smooth. Okay, so here's the headstock right now, and as you can probably see, or maybe you can't because the camera won't pick it up, there are some imperfections left in the finish because I've been scraping away. And there also were a couple of imperfections left from other weird things, like super glue had run down, so I had to reshape that a little bit. I have here a can of lacquer, and I'm just going to take a brush and I'm just going to stroke it over all the areas. I'm not going to pay too much attention on making it perfect, but I'm going to make sure that I put on very thin amount so that it won't run everywhere. And then we'll be back and continue working on the neck once it has dried, and we can, you know, do some sanding of the lacquer and touch up to make it perfect. But before then, I'm just going to lacquer it and leave it to dry, and so I'll see you in a bit. Okay, thanks. The lacquer's dried, but as you probably can see in the reflection, it looks a little bit uneven. So here I have 1000 grit wet and dry sandpaper with a little bit of water on it, and I'm just gonna start sanding to smooth everything out. And I'm gonna go over all of the areas, so the inner parts here where I sanded it and finished it and removed things yesterday, and just make everything super smooth. And the way you make sure that it's super smooth is you sand it and then you check for the dull areas and make sure that the entire place is dull. And I'll come back once I've sanded everything, because you don't need to see me sand more than what you're seeing in this little clip here of me sanding this place here. But just remember to sand it and then check and see what kind of reflections you get. And right here you can see that you can still see some marks. So we need to continue sanding here for a little bit. Okay, so the next thing I have to do is I have a weird mark here that is probably kind of hard to see. Maybe you can see that it looks a little bit weird and wonky in the reflection. I don't really know what's happened here, but I think some super glue has run down the neck and collected here in a pool. So I have a piece of wood here with some wet and dry sandpaper with some water on top of it. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to sand like this and flatten the surface, and I'll go like this for a bit, and then I'll dry it off and I'll look at it and try to see if all the highlights are gone, which they're not. There's a little bit more, and then I'll just continue like this. Okay, so now we're gonna buff this area right here because it's become dull, and so we're just gonna smear a little bit of buffing compound onto this area here, like so. Just smear it around. And this is the kind of rubbing compound you buy to polish your car. So if you're looking for it and you don't know where to get it, go to your local like automotive shop or something like that. And in my drill I have a foam sponge. And I know it looks terrible, but that's because I have been saying for a long time that I'm going to go and buy a new one, and I'm just not getting it done, which is super bad. When they get to this point, you really should switch them out. And I'm just being very lazy, which is something you shouldn't do. So don't do that, even though I'm doing it. And then I'm just going to move it around. And I don't know if you can see it, but it's pretty glossy now. It's not perfect, but it's okay, I think. And now I'm just going to go around and do it everywhere where I've sanded and put on new finish and try to get this to look neat. Okay, so here I have an old bone nut that I was gonna use at some point on something, and it's been laying around. And I'm gonna put it on this guitar for now, and we'll get something better later down the line when we go to like upgrade things on this guitar. And I think it's gonna fit. It's a little bit on the small side. We should actually have another nut, but I think it's gonna work. But the slot here needs to be widened a little bit, and it's gonna need to be widened for whatever nut I put in, because I put it on the smaller side. So I'm just gonna take a file and sand away the back. This part here is the back. Don't ever sand towards the fretboard. And that's why a tiny file like this works very good, because you can get in and you can sand away without worrying about moving up against the fretboard, because you can see where you put the file. And so I'm just going to go like this until the nut goes into the slot, which, as you can see, doesn't need to widen that much. Okay, so now I have sanded this out so that this will fit. And I also glue a piece of wood on the back of this, because I felt like this was a little bit too short and this was a little bit too deep. And so we can put this in, and I'm trying to center it up so that we have, because it's a little bit too tiny, so that we have enough spacing on both sides. And it's just there for now. We'll switch it out. And if you make it fit so that you can just press it in, that's the best, honestly, because you don't necessarily need to glue a nut in. And if you need to, you should only have like a little dab of glue. But this will work. I can feel that it's gonna stay in place. And yeah, it looks good. And we're gonna reshape this when we go to put strings on and make everything perfect. Okay, so that's the end of the video. We still have a little bit of work to do on the neck in form of setup and polishing the frets and things like that. But we'll take that when we actually put the guitar together, because there's no sense really in doing it now. I might change the back of the neck. I don't really know. I sort of like it, but I also sort of feel like I could make it a little bit thinner, faster, and things like that. But we'll look at that later, maybe when we actually come to putting the guitar together. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. If you wouldn't mind liking and subscribing, and comment below your thoughts and feelings about the video, then I would appreciate that a lot. This is the way the neck looks right now, and I hope that you agree with me that it looks better. So, in the first video you saw me showing you this pickguard and talking about how I was going to switch for it. I really like this pickguard. Different than a regular white pickguard, you know, with the pearl thing. And I sort of am a sucker for Stratocaster that has, you know, a darker color body and a light colored pickguard. So white, cream, or, you know, the tea green pickguards are usually what I want. But I found this tortoiseshell pickguard. It's the exact same pickguard, you know, shape and everything. It's also a Fender one, and so it's very easy to switch. And I'm just gonna, you know, do a sneak reveal. I did a sneak reveal already in the last one, if you paid attention. I mean, it was sort of obvious, but anyway. And just let me know what you think. Which pickguard do you like the more? Because I'm not 100% sure what I think, but I think I'm leaning towards the tortoiseshell, actually. And so I think I'm gonna switch to that. So we're just super quickly gonna take a look at the body with the two pickguards on, and just let me know what you think. But first, I just want to say, because I feel a little bit, you know, bad about it. I'm really sorry about the audio quality on my last video. I don't know what happened. I managed to fix it somewhat halfway through it or something like that, but yeah, I'm sorry about it. And I'm gonna try to not have that horrible audio quality again. So yeah. Okay, so here's the body. And here's how it would have looked with the white pickguard. And here's how it looks with the tortoiseshell. And I personally just think the tortoiseshell looks better. Let me know what you think, but I think that, so we're gonna go with that. And if you manage to change my mind, we'll just swap it out in a later video. So before we switch out the pickguard, which is just something that doesn't take that long to do, I just want to quickly go over the electronics, because maybe you'll at least learn something that way. This is a little bit messy because I have some different colored wires and things like that. It is not as neat as maybe I would want it to be. But basically, you can see here there are, from these pickups, 3 wires. And that's because you can coil split them. And I'm not going to do that because I really dislike coil splitting. It's really not my thing. And so the wires go over here from the pickups, and the red and white wire here are just twisted together and sorted in place and tucked away here where all the other wires are. And then you have 3 legs here where the green wires get connected, and the green wires are up here from the pickups. This wire goes here all the way over here and is connected down here. The middle one is connected in the middle, and the bridge is over here. And it might look confusing to you because you might think that one is closest to there and that one is closest to there, but you have to understand that the switch is being flipped opposite of how it looks from the front, which is maybe a really strange way to say it. But basically, if this is the switch, when it's in this position, this will be in the end, and as it gets turned that way, the switch on the inside will be that way. So it basically moves like that. So the connection there will be to the neck when this is there, and that's why that wire goes there. I don't know if that made any sense at all, but that's what we're going with. Then we have the connecting the jumper wire here that connects this side of the switch to this side of the switch, letting the switch where the pickups are be connected to the input of the volume pot, which is the last leg on this side. The first leg on this side gets grounded to itself, which is maybe a little bit hard to see. Same thing goes with the tone pots. They have the leg in the middle, and you can blend them in. They have a capacitor that they share. You can give them each different capacitor if you want to, but it's not necessary. They can share one, and then they have a output signal. They don't need an input signal because they are just being blended into the switch signal. So they don't need an input. They just need an output. So their output signal can be blended into the switch that goes into the volumes input. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, write a comment below and I'll make an even more in detailed video about this. And then you have the output here, which is the blue wire that goes from the leg in the middle. And then you have some ground wires, and I have one ground wire here that is white, but other than that, all the black wires you see here are ground wires. This one here goes to all these thick cables here and is the ground wire that comes off from all the pickups. If you look up here, you see that they all have one wire that is black. Now, you could do a coil splitting if you wanted to, but then you would probably have to have push-pull pots or a switch. And maybe one day I'll experiment with something like that. And if I do, I'll make a video about it. But it's not something that I enjoy. I have a Johnny Marr guitar that has a coil split, but that's because it's a Johnny Marr guitar. And there are some sounds in his playing that I think needs it. So that's basically it. I could definitely go more into detail about how to solder one of these up, and maybe even make a video where I solder a Strat up. Just let me know in the comments below if that's something you're interested in, because I'll definitely at some point make another Strat. I'm always making Strats. So yeah, let's move on to the next part. Okay, so the first thing we have to do in switching all these things over to the new pickguard is we have to just pull all of these parts off. And there are definitely easier ways to get them off than to just pull them with your fingers like this, but I don't feel like it's that bad. And then we need to remove the nut holding the controls in place. And I'm using the world's cutest little wrench to do that because I have it, and look at it, it's so tiny, like just in my hand. Look how small it is. And then we just need to remove the screws holding the switch in place, and it's just a matter of turning the screw around. Don't think I need to explain it further than that. I might be wrong, but yes. And then we'll do the same thing with the screws. that are holding the pickguard. Just turn them like this until they are all out. And that's the last one. Now we can just lift this pickguard off and put it to the side. Okay, so now we can just take the old pickguard and we can just put it in place over everything, you know, where it was supposed to go. And I'm actually not gonna work in this way because it's kind of weird, but it makes it kind of look cool when I edit things, you know, when I cut from one cut to another and I'm just placing this pickguard into the right place, and you can maybe see that things will fit. So it's just a question of putting things back in their place. Pull the volume pot back through its hole, hold it in place from underneath, put the washer on and the nut that holds it in place, and start screwing it down. And first I just finger tighten it like this, and then I come back with my cute little wrench and I just make sure that it gets tightened down and looks like it's not gonna go anywhere. And then we have the switch over here, and it's actually a little bit fiddly to put back in place, especially when you're trying to film what you're doing, because your hands are in your own way. But you have to press on the switch from the underside and screw in the screws, so, and then the switch will be in its place. The pickups are by far the hardest thing to film. It's almost impossible to show how this is going together, but you have to put the screw through the hole, like so, and then you have to put the little spring on top of the screw and then fiddle around with the pickup so that they match up. And I am not very good at showing how this goes together. And then you just screw in the screw to secure it all together. Okay, so it's time to put these things back on. This one is really easy. You just press it back on. See? Super easy. These ones, I pull them all the way so that they are all basically off. So if this was an actual guitar at the moment, there'd be no volume. And then I take the volume and I put it with the text facing that way, which I hope you can see what I mean with that. And the reason why I do that is because when you look down and you play on your guitar, you'll be able to read them because they'll be facing you, basically, the player. And I'll try to line them up. I'm probably gonna do a terrible job right now and have to go back and put them in the right place, but I try my best to make sure they are all lining up the same way. Something like that. So let's move on to the next part. Hey, I'm a 90s rapper! You wish! Now get back to work! Yes, master. So, remember these? So, the strap buttons are supposed to have a ring like this that is made out of felt and that softens and cushions the actual button from hitting the lacquer. It's almost the same thing as these plastic little cushions that some neck plates will have. Now, these are not very expensive, but they're also not very good. And if you have a guitar that you've had for a long time, you'll most likely see, and now when I say long time, I don't mean like a couple of years, I'm talking about like 10, 15 years. Older guitars will have these and they're basically disintegrated, so you can make new ones out of something better. Here I have a scrap piece of leather. I know some people don't like using leather, but it's a very good material and it lasts forever. So we're gonna make new ones out of leather. And yeah, you're just gonna be happy. You're just gonna have to be happy about it, because I'm not gonna change. I refuse to change. I am who I am. Yeah, so it's actually super easy. You just need to take your little ring, if you already have one, and draw out a circle. You can use this as a template, like so. If you don't have any of them to use as a template, the measurements are the outer dimension is 10 mil circle, here to here, diameter, and the inner little circle, or the hole, is a 2.5 mil diameter, something like that. Just basically draw them out, and they don't have to be perfect. Now, having a good pair of scissors that are made for cutting harder materials is not a must, but it will make life easier for you, and I like the idea of making life easier for myself and also for others. That's one of the reasons why I make YouTube videos. And you can just cut these out with a good pair of scissors. If you don't have good scissors, you should most likely think about investing in some good scissors. And you can make a hole punch for this, and at some point I'm going to build one, and I'm going to show you how to do it, because the idea of having a tool that makes this excites me. And so yeah, I'm most likely gonna do that at some point. And as you probably can see, I'm cutting these out fairly sloppily, you know. I'm not, and again, you know, you spend as much time on this as you want to. I'm not gonna pretend. like it matters, but it might do for you. I fold it in half and I just cut a little groove into the middle. I fold it in half the other way and I cut a little groove in the middle again. You can use a drill and drill through it if you want to. It just seems sort of overkill to me. And then we can take our strap button and the screw and we can push it onto it. And we just have to make sure that the soft part of the leather is on the outside of the screw, because if the soft side is on the outside, which is, you know, the inner side here, this is the outer side, if the soft side lies against the lacquer, it will be better off. That's what I'm trying to say. So now I'm just going to put the other one on and we'll move on to the next part. And there you have them. And if you want to make this even easier, you could just poke a hole and screw the screw through the hole and then line the scissor up against the button, the side where they meet, and just cut around using it as a template. And that would be even easier. These are so easy to do. I don't recommend you ever buying these, because you buy scrap leather at the arts and crafts store, and then, you know, you get, even if you just buy one piece, you'll have enough scraps like this to make 1,000 of these or something. And you could actually switch them out, because these are going to be better than the ones you get on your custom shop, you know, whatever guitar, because this is leather, and leather is like the best material in the world. So yeah. Okay, so the next part is the tuners. We are gonna fiddle around inside of these and make them better. Okay, so here are the tuners right now. And I'm just going to put a drop of synthetic oil on each of them. And when I say drop, I really mean a drop. Now, because I was asked not too long ago what I mean when I say synthetic oil. It's called synthetic oil and it's for bikes. This is for like gears and for chains, you know, the things that moves on the bike. And so I just assume, and have done so for a while now, that, you know, it will help my guitar tuners as well. And I've used it on a lot of tuners and it's worked fine. And as long as you use a tiny amount, it usually won't go everywhere. I've had situations where I've put on too much and I've had to clean my tuners. So yeah, there are also grease you can get, which maybe is better. I don't know which is better. I think that maybe grease is better if you need to put a lot, and oil is better if you just need a little, and that it's sort of like, I don't know, you balance one thing and the other and you see what works best for you, basically. Anyway, I've put a drop of oil on each of them, and now I'm just going to take them like this and I'm just going to turn the key around to spread the oil around for a little bit. Okay, so the next thing that we're gonna do is super strain, and actually something I've never done before, or had to do before, maybe I should say. And that's why we're using the Dutch angle, because if you know anything about film, you know the Dutch angle is for the strange and weird, and when it's something is out of order. The trem here, if you remember in the first video where we looked at the body, the claw was pulled all the way back. And I had this very suspicious feeling about these springs because they were still loose. And the thing is, if you pull your claw all the way back and it can't go any further and your springs still feel kind of loose and not under tension at all, that's not the way it's supposed to be. That tells me that the spring has been pulled too much and it's sort of lost its life, and it doesn't really work as a spring anymore. And so I bought new springs. These are fender springs, and I feel like, you know, might as well splooge a little bit and buy a little bit more expensive springs. And so the issue is that the holes are not big enough, which is super strange. So we're just gonna have to widen them a little bit. They're about almost like 1/3 of a mil or something like that, too small. And so we're gonna just make them a little bit bigger. Okay, so I have my drill here, I have my bit right here. I don't need to go far down at all, maybe a little bit more than that. Something like this. And I'm just gonna... I don't even know if you can see that there are flakes coming out, but there you have them. And so let's see if the new springs will fit in. And there you go, all the way down, just like it's supposed to be. Before the holes were drilled out, they stopped like that, and they looked kind of wonky and weird. The body is sort of glossy right now, but it has a little bit of orange peel and some unevenness in the finish. So we're gonna level it with some sandpaper. I have a sanding block here, and I have some 12,000 grit sandpaper right here. And I'm just gonna wrap the paper around the block like this. And I'm gonna put some water on the body, and I'm gonna start sanding. Now, the reason why I'm starting at 1200 and I'm not starting at 600 and moving up to 1200, which is what I would usually do, is because I have a very thin paint job on this. The clear coat is really thin on this one. It's not the way I would normally do things. And in the end of the video, we're gonna talk a little bit on why I've chosen to do things that way. And I'm also gonna explain this mark up here in the finish, because there are some small imperfections, and you might have seen those imperfections in other videos and thought, why didn't he just, put something in there under the lacquer to fix them? And I'm gonna explain why later in the video. So for now, I'm just gonna put some water on the body and I'm gonna start sanding. And then we'll jump to the next part, which is gonna be putting on the neck. And after that, all the other parts. Okay, so the thing that you have to think about when you're sanding this is to keep an eye on the finish and make sure that when it turns dull and you don't have any dots of gloss, you stop. We don't have to go any further than that. So I'm just gonna put a bit of water on. This is lukewarm water and it has a couple of drops of soap in it. And I'm just gonna start sanding. And the water will make the paper sort of almost stick to the body, so we'll get a really nice, almost clamped down feeling as we sand. And I'm just gonna go in random circles like this. I don't know if you can see the high spots, but they're basically the spots that aren't flat and dull, but that still looks a little bit shiny. You move the body basically like this, and if you see any high spots, you know you have to keep on sanding. So, I'm not really done yet. Okay, so now we're gonna polish the body, so we're just gonna smear some of this polish compound onto the body. And it's just the same thing that I used on the neck. So I'm just gonna smear it out a little bit like this. It doesn't have to be that even, because we're gonna move it around. And then we're gonna take our wire wheel, and I promise that the next guitar we build, I'm gonna replace this before then, okay? I'm just gonna move this around here now. And I don't know if you can see it, but right there, you can see how right there it's a little bit glossy. Or at least hopefully you can. Okay, so here's the body now, and I have sanded it and I've polished it. And now the first thing we're gonna do is attach the neck. And then we can start putting the other parts on one by one. Okay? Putting in the claw, and I'm going to use shorter screws. And if you want to know why I'm putting in 5, it's because it will cover up the mistakes of the holes being drilled through. I didn't feel like filling them up, especially since I don't really know how the screws are gonna behave. And I also think this might actually look kind of cool. I don't have a guitar with 5 springs. So yeah, let's try that out on this guitar, and maybe we'll change it later. Who knows? Okay, so here we have one of those fiddly things that we have to do in order to put the guitar together. And it is that we need to put the ground wire from the claw onto one of the pots. I'm gonna try to see if I can show you, but it might be a little bit difficult. Now, it doesn't really matter where you put the pots, as long as everything goes together neatly. And then we'll just take these 2 wires here, a blue one and a black one, and we'll just feed them through the hole here that we just drilled, and we'll grab them on the other side here. Okay, so the wires are connected, and now I'm just hold it in place. And I'm just gonna take my drill, and I'm just gonna drill a tiny little hole and put in a screw, and then screw it in to the body so that the output jack is held in place, something like that. And then just one over here on the opposite side. Okay, so when it comes to putting the pickguard on, we have to be a little bit more careful than the output jack here. And there are tools that you're supposed to use that I didn't use here, but it doesn't really matter that much. At least I don't think it does. Here's an awl, so I'm gonna try to center up the screw hole here and push it in. And it leaves a little mark that will guide my drill. Now, the reason why it's more important on the pickguard is because the pickguard can be screwed in place a little bit crooked or a little bit weird, and it will line up weirdly. And once you've put down your first screws that are holding the pickguard in place, it's sort of too late to fix it. So you're gonna have to, you know, take them out and plug the hole and re-drill it. So yeah, that would be annoying. So here is the guitar, and it's all put together, and it looks good. And so, first off, we're gonna just play it a little bit and see what it sounds like. So here's the G chord. Good. Now let's move on to the next thing. No, I'm kidding. Sorry. Yeah, so this is how the guitar looks right now, and there are a couple of things that we need to talk about before we end the video. And the first thing is, you can probably see, and you've probably seen, these little marks that are somewhere around here. The guitar has a couple of imperfections that I couldn't get rid of. And one of the reasons why I couldn't get rid of them is because I would have had to put some sort of filler underneath before I painted the guitar. Now, when I sanded the guitar, and we're starting to get into the reason why there is information about the guitar build that I didn't tell you until now. When I sanded the guitar, after I had removed the old lacquer, I sanded the grain filler that was under and removed as much as I could without getting to the bare wood. Because if I had gotten to the bare wood, I would have had to put on new sealer to protect the finish so it didn't sink into the wood. So I removed as much as I could, and then I started painting the guitar. Now, there is something special about the paint, and a reason why I couldn't fill these marks in with something else, with some sort of putty or something that would fix all the little small mistakes. Fender used to offer custom paint jobs on guitars back in like the 60s or something, and the way they would do it is that they would have a chart of paint and you could decide from that which color you wanted, and then you order your guitar and they'd paint it in that color. Now, if they didn't have a body that was already in that color, they would either paint a new body, or they would take a body they already had that had already been painted and just spray paint over it. Now that means that if you have an old guitar now, because you know it's the years later, sometimes you can see the relicking happening and the paint the body originally had before Fender painted over it. You can see that paint come through where the wear has gone through the body. Now I thought that was really interesting, and if you remember, I made a video not too long ago where I talked about an experiment I had. I showed you one of my guitars and how I never clear coated it and let the paint be worn off by me playing. And this is a similar experiment. This guitar has a clear coat, but I've done everything I can to make it as thin as possible, and I've sanded away a lot of the clear coat too. And the thing is, underneath this yellow paint there is another color, but that's not all, because underneath that color there is another color, but that's not all, because under that one there is another color, and that is also not all, because underneath that one there is another color. So this is what's gonna happen with this guitar. You let me know in the comments below how often you want an update on this guitar. Once a month, once a year, you know, and we'll just see what happens. And I'm not going to relic this guitar or do anything weird to it. I'm just going to treat it like any other guitar I have, which means that it's probably going to be smashed to pieces by tomorrow because I can't keep track of anything. No, but seriously, it's going to get relic most likely because it's super thin and I am going to play it. I'm not going to play it more than any of my other guitars. I'm going to have the same sort of philosophy I have to all my guitars, which is I play it when I feel like it and when I want to use it. If there is a song that I feel like, ooh, that guitar will work on it, I will use it on it. And if I feel like, ooh, a friend wants me to come over and play guitar and I feel like using this guitar, that's when I'm going to use it. So it's not going to be used like, ooh, I'm never going to play any other guitar, I'm just going to play this guitar and we'll see how fast it relics, because that would be weird too. I'm just going to use it like any other of my guitars. And the secret of the different colors of paint will slowly come through, or maybe quickly, I don't know. Maybe I'll drop something on it and it will get a ding that goes through all the layers. We don't know what will happen. I'm also going to do some upgrades to it because there are some parts that I'm not really happy about. I'm, for example, not very happy with these tuners that the guitar came with. I think they're okay for a new beginner guitarist guitar, but they're not good enough for what I want out of a guitar, and they're not better than what you get on like the lowest entry level of a Harley Benton. Even upgrading the guitar to having those tuners would be an improvement. So that's gonna happen, and some other things. But anyway, for now, that's it when it comes to this guitar. I hope you've enjoyed the videos. Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. Please like the video, and if you're not subscribed, I would appreciate it if you subscribed. Until next time, stay awesome and cool, and you go and restore a guitar, because there is always a guitar in need of repairing and love. And you don't necessarily need to buy a new guitar. Every time you buy a guitar, you could sometimes find something weird that someone has ruined, and you can make it into something new and special and awesome. That is all yours.